Hello, good evening, and welcome to So Much Game with episode 4, I think, of Worlds Without Nye-mbers.
Is this the final one, or are we doing another one after this? I think this is the... I don't know, I can't remember.
I don't know. I don't know if there was a set amount of episodes that we'd agreed upon.
True. That's very fair.
Go on forever and ever. No.
There'll be future watchers going, but they said this last time, and it's like, it's been 2 weeks. We don't know, man.
Yeah, precisely. Episode 407. The microeconomy of the 13th province of...
Exactly, yes, of course.
No, I think this week the idea is to flesh out Aris itself a bit more.
Yeah.
Maybe starting with some history of Aris and the very recent revolution.
Yep.
Other than that, I'm trying to think if I have anything I need to tell people before we get started, other than the whole like things and follow and subscribe and stuff. But you all know that, and if you haven't done it by now, you don't like us enough to do it.
Oh gosh,
that's just
like high school all over again.
Yeah, there you go. And if that didn't guilt you into it, I'll try something else next week.
Oh no.
So obviously with me once again is Nye.
Hello.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Nye. Hi. I'm on far too many shows and online podcasts and all of that stuff. And I've really been enjoying this. It's been nice getting to flesh a world out, as crazy and silly as this world is, with the tree army related things, the deposed ruler that just lives across the street and nobody really does anything about him, the like 8 different world ending cataclysms, which I think I was thinking about this because originally I was like, oh, that's really lazy, but there was another part of it that's like, it kind of fits with the absurdism aspect to it, because it's like, oh yeah, no, you're picking your poison, like this world is super unstable, but I liked it.
So yeah, we'll probably pick up where we left off a couple of weeks ago before I got grievously ill and couldn't stream. Anyway, Nye, I know you're in a lot of streams and things at the moment. That's exactly why I picked you, for your star streaming quality.
Of course, yeah.
So yeah, Aris. I think last week, let me have a look at the notes. So last week we started on the whole kingdom itself bit. We gave it a proper name. Well, you gave it a proper name. There was some talk of linguistics touchstones being maybe something Spanishy, and maybe, or more likely, just being bits of existing names, which seems to be the theme we're running on at the moment anyway. There were a few events, obviously the plague, which has now been named the Withering Torpor, which is fun. The Great Awakening was a sort of return to old values by Montague, which led to some people deciding to go back to very, very old values. Yep. And there's Kuvian counter-revolutionary espionage infiltrators. That's a mouthful. And also David Montague's decadence and excess until he was finally deposed. So he lives across the street and keeps telling people what to do, but no one's listening, as the new revolutionary council is in his old building and trying to run the place.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, I think we. One of the interesting things that came out of it last time was this talk of humans essentially being like a group name for sentient beings, basically, which I quite like actually as a thing. So you have elves and dwarves and things, but they're just all humans. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
And other than that, we built societies and values and stuff for the for Aris, and there was the idea of a religion that doesn't really have a official clergy or structure, but it's sort of a way for them to rationalize the world around them.
Yep.
I think that's pretty much a quick recap of everything we got through last time. So this time, do you want to start with like building up a bit of history for it? Because we've sort of
definitely
thrown Aris out there as this tumultuous new revolutionary state that is trying out something completely different to everyone else, and it's also going to be the focal point if players were ever to play it. So I just think like it sort of you need to have an idea of what's happened to get it to this point, I feel.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. How far back we want to go? Like 10 years, a century?
Yeah, like we could have some broad stroke sort of things like, it was this or that house or monarchy or whatever that was running it before, and have done for God knows how long, and that sort of like, and then maybe delve a little bit deeper into maybe the last 10 years or something where this revolution's picked up and taken off and brought them to where they are now.
Okay, so I would say that probably the best place to start would be the monarchy and kind of how that was beforehand.
Yeah.
So, did we give the monarchy any last names or anything?
We haven't given them any names or any real descriptions so far. I don't think we've even really spoke about what was initially deposed when this revolution.
Excellent.
Like, the idea that it was a monarchy was definitely in there-ish because all of the surrounding countries are, or nations are, but really it's very open at the moment.
Okay, I have an idea. Okay, I'm just gonna. I'm bad at naming things. I'm gonna get a monarchy name generator, which is how I've been. Because I decided that doing silly names is only gonna get me so far, and I should probably just use other people's silly names. Because at this point, they're just going to be the Habsburgs or the or the Earlians. Which doesn't sound right. Okay. We'll go for
the Albans.
Yeah. Okay, I quite like that as a last name, like as a monarch name. De La Fontaine.
Ooh. Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds fancy. Sounds like it's a mouthful. Sounds like some poor squire's got to say that in a hurried fashion. And now we're presenting the Royal De La Fontaine.
Interestingly enough, I used to fence with someone called that, but there you go.
Oh, really? De La Fontaine. Well, does it ascribe to your rule of use people you don't like, or was it someone you did like you were like on good terms?
Do you want me to answer that on the internet? I suppose there's a very I don't know about that, but there's a very low chance of them hearing. So there's maybe cheated me out of a few titles, but
there we go. A rival like Caesar and Pompey. And by that I mean someone else beat Pompey, and you're just like, oh well. Oh, that kind of sucks then.
I was gonna do that.
Really anticlimactic, actually.
Hi,
okay.
Bubble Rich, by the way.
Yeah, hi. Yeah. It's good to see you. Let me think. So I would think that. So this is where I'm going to try not get too historical because.
Yep.
Fun fact: most deposed monarchies tend not to go right off the deep end. Most of the time, what deposes them is usually either an instability within the system of the upper class, who usually are the ones that get deposed with them or depose them and then go, hey, ha ha ha. Or it's usually things beyond their control, but they become a figurehead. Now, that's not me saying monarchies are a good idea. That's me just saying that it's very rare in history that we have the despotic tyrant who roams the lands. And I don't really want to do that for the monarchs.
I feel like if you think about historical revolutions and monarchies that have been deposed, a lot of it was they just didn't bother to react or reacted far too slow to problems occurring, and we're like, it'll sort itself out. It didn't sort itself out.
Oh dear. About Nero and Caligula, and in the case of Nero, it's like, yeah, he was actually, fairly competent as a statesman, and most of his problems were personal, and it was his enemies that kind of tarred and feathered him. To be clear, he was a very bad man who did very bad things. But from like the whole idea of him like setting Rome ablaze and playing the fiddle while Rome burned and stuff like that is it's from his contemporaries who didn't like him. It's the same with Caesar and, as I said, Caligula.
Yeah.
But yes, that's what I'm saying. So I don't like presenting monarchs as these figures because I feel like it dilutes the actual problem, which is usually the whole corruption that often accompanies that. So I'm thinking they probably didn't really understand their people very well, the De La Fontaine. Like throughout history, they've always been this kind of
well, call them like a sort of distant monarchy throughout history, maybe. There's the distance between themselves and the common folk was so far that they didn't understand what's going on. You okay? Well, I'm glad, Bubble Reg, we could inspire you to go and actually listen to people who know what they're talking about.
Well, yeah, you've always got to be careful with YouTube history because it fluctuates. There are some really good, like I have a lot of fan favorites, but I will not talk about them here. But there are others that you're just like, not sure where you're getting those sources. But yes, sorry, that was the cat yowling and someone was just checking. She was, okay. Yes, so that usually comes. Thank you, Bubble Reg, for the compliment. I'm thinking it definitely is coming down more to people just not knowing what's going on. I mean, I would say the obvious ones, if we're taking historical examples from some of the stuff we've seen, I would say, because we have talked about famines and plagues. Yeah. So it's quite likely
famine is also a great onset for revolution usually.
Yep. 100%. And usually, just throwing this out there, when you read about famines in history, there's normally enough food being produced, and that's being taken away from.
Seems to not be getting where it should be.
Yeah. Most historical famines have a human element to them, as much as they have an environmental one. Environmental issues usually exacerbate social problems rather than completely fabricate them out of thin air. But so yes, I would imagine that the nobility were dragging their feet for the last, let's say, 10, 20 years, making it difficult for the monarchs to do anything. And I would say that because a big issue I have. I was actually talking with a friend about this on Monday. There are some really fantastic fantasy books out there, but something that can slightly concern me is when I open a fantasy book and the first page I see is a lexicon of the 80 people's names that I've got to learn. And I understand the reason.
War and Peace level.
Yeah, and there's quite a few fantasy authors. I don't want to be like, and yes, there was Smith de la Fontaine the Seventh and his political. Like, I think if we're talking about, and also because I want this world to be adaptable for a GM, that's another thing always bugged me when I'm reading a tabletop RPG world, and I'm like, you're not really giving me a lot of like wiggle room. Like, I need guidance, but I don't want it to be difficult to like slide in a concept or an idea. So someone could, create a monarch in their place. But I would say that's the general consensus.
Yeah, no, that's good
from
idea.
Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, like, in this case, for the history itself, we can keep it quite loose as well. Like, core points of these sort of things happened. Ta-da! Current revolutionary state of Aris, but it just needs a bit of background to sort of...
Yeah. I think that's what I'll do. I'll just try and keep the fundamentals of what you need to know for a history. So in terms of the political structure, just on a simplistic basis, I imagine that the monarchy holds absolute power in the state. However, the actual people doing that, carrying forth of the will, are the nobility. And I don't think it would be too difficult of a stretch to say that there are times where the nobility says, should we be doing this? And the nobility goes, no, don't worry about that, because that costs money.
Modernize the tax system so that you actually have to pay taxes? No, we won't vote for that anyway.
And
is it sort of? Are you seeing it as a sort of like a States General kind of situation, like the monarch has gone out of their way not to call the Estates General because then they slow everything down and stop him or her from doing from doing anything.
And that's the thing though, the Estates General, little history fact, that was his meant to be like his trap card. So you won't listen to me about changing the tax code. Haha! And then the common folk came in and went, this sucks. Fuck all you guys. We're gonna go to this tennis court over here and start writing some legislation. He was like, oh no, they pulled their trap cards.
Their trap card was a lot of the lawyers are on their side.
And the clergy.
Yeah, we can make legislation. Totally. Come here. We'll stop writing it out.
Exactly. Interestingly though, I think it'd be fun to have a historical event, perhaps earlier in its creation, maybe a century or two ago, similar to what the Barons' War was, where the king or queen or the emperor or the empress basically went, why do we have to listen to you? Fuck you, I'm going to try and take power. And then all the nobility ganged up on them and was like, okay, I'll listen to you guys in future. And that's why, if anyone asks the question, why didn't the monarch just rebel? It's like, well, they have all the people and the money to pay the people. Sure, the monarch is wealthy, but that wealth and influence only goes as far as people are willing to listen to them. And if the nobility are their mouths and ears, it's kind of hard to enact such a policy. In terms of kind of grander senses of politics, I would say that the nobility probably have their own institutions, such as, if you want to go to kind of a simple thing that people can understand, kind of like the Sheriff of Nottingham works for the king, but it's just that there's a noble in between the king and the sheriff, that kind of thing. So they are the interstitial fiber between direct monarchy to all civil service. I would say, for simplicity, the civil service is just a fairly basic system. So, like guards for cities. I don't really know what else you'd need that would not be kind of creeping into like. That would not be creeping into like I was about to say bankers, but a bank would probably just be its own business. I don't think it would be an arm of the nobility.
Yeah, but it might have in tax and revenue and
a tax collector,
that sort of thing. Yeah, and infrastructure that they have some kind of administration there, and there's always nobility in between that and the king as well. Yeah, that's good. Right. Are they ye olde sword nobility, or?
I think that in similarity to a lot of British and German nobility, and I guess French, although they kind of that shifted after the revolution, it's that similar kind of of knights and honor, but we don't actually dress up like that because that would be lame. And it is like
because,
I think they dropped.
Don't fit in there.
Exactly. I think that many of the nobility... Oh, actually, let's talk about the nobility. So I think the nobility have come from lineages that served in various conflicts, like the kind of, I shall raise you up thee. But as history has gone on and the wars got a lot more professional, I guess would be a way, in the sense that... Well, I guess... they stagnated the nobility, the rise to power. Perhaps that was something that that's something that Montague maybe is drawing upon with the return to tradition, was the concept. Perhaps Aris was a lot more comfortable having a meritocracy, but like all meritocracy's failings, eventually the positions just got filled by families that were like, 8 generations ago, I definitely did that. So like, I should have the position, duh. So maybe perhaps in the more, I don't want to say primitive, but I mean like in the kind of, if to use France as our example, if in the Charlemagne age period of Aris's existence, there were like nobles that perhaps, I don't know, fought for that ruler or something, and their lineage has just carried on. And as the centuries have gone by, it's been harder and harder for, the common man to rise up to the ranks and riches because there's nothing to rise into. Entire social hierarchy has been filled, and the families obviously, and they're like, no, fuck no. And that's not to say that, like slaying a monster or saving someone from a castle is necessarily what they would have to do, but I think it's definitely another example of like an archaic aspect of their culture that the nobility have maintained and perhaps flaunt. So maybe they do like train in swordsmanship or do horse riding, but it's more of it's definitely more of like, if I was to go as far, it's closer to like, like cosplaying or dressing up or like a Ren fair for them. It's not. Yeah, none of them are riding into battle. They're definitely hiding behind the droves of footmen.
Does that mean that Aris doesn't really have a good or useful system for creating generals then? Because they're and admirals? Because they would have probably been drawn from them, but if they're not actively learning how to fight and more playing at it, they probably, they end up being generals if it comes down to it, but don't really know what they're doing.
That's definitely where I'm going from. And if I was to draw from the American Civil War, the fact that like how they raise their armies and become generals, probably the only time where people may rise into positions is if certain landowners or whatever just basically they go to their village that they have dominion over or are like influential in and go, right, who wants to be a soldier? You'll get paid by me. and it's like, oh,
and
okay,
then
I've
not get
got
paid.
like exactly, yeah. But it's that kind of literally that's how the armies are formed. Is they just drum up in their local area to get people.
So
fighting.
that is sort of also typical of that era as well. That you know, basically as a noble person, you turn up with the army that you're taking with you. Rather than
also,
levy en masse or whatever.
As a side note, because it's worth mentioning now, at least for me, I don't do gendered roles. I just it's like there's still problems with the society, but I really don't try to put misogyny or other forms of gender discrimination in my worlds. Because I think if you're going to do that, you need to be saying something about it rather than just doing it to be like, yeah, it sucks, doesn't it? It's like, it does, and you're not helping by just pointing at the problem and going, that's bad. Sorry, that's always the thing that bugs me when I'm reading something and they have like discrimination in it, but they just kind of like, that's some bad stuff there. You're like, it is, but with your art, you need to do more than just say that's really not good there, is it? It's like, yeah, and you know, you can do some, you know. So yeah, I don't think that would be a case. I think that for nobility, women or non-binary people have exactly the same standing as men. To be clear, because to them, it's like, do you have money? Oh, you do. Welcome aboard. Oh no, they do not have money. Go away. Shoo. It's like it's not because you're a woman. It's because you have no money. That is my thing, and I think that's a fair. I think that's a fair kind of corruption balance level. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
At least to me. Yeah.
That is. Yeah. That's perfectly fine, and fits with the world we've been building anyway. So.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm trying to think what else. I don't really want to do too weirdly. I don't want to do too much stuff, like military stuff, because to be honest, I don't think it would come up very much in the campaign.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, it doesn't really matter. There's a good chance there's going to be this big war going on as part of the campaign, but you know, it's unlikely the players will be in charge of the armies and therefore have to plan an entire campaign.
We're still doing historical stuff as well, so I'm just trying to think what other historical things need to be taken into consideration that's not already been covered or could be filled in.
Yeah, I think we've got like a good idea of the monarchy and the nobility as they were. So then we could push it up a bit to what happened to cause them, or at least the monarchy itself, to be deposed. Was it the nobility deposed them situation and then people turned on them? Or
I like to think that it's actually to draw, because it's just turning into like a complete soup of historical references. I like to think it's similar to the
world building.
the Kaisermarine strikes, the mutinies that occurred, or if you want to go with like the French army, I think they tried to rally them for another war with anybody. We have quite a lot of targets, and the people went, no, we are starving, we have sickness, you need to know this isn't happening. And when they did, the very rational grab what soldiers you have and tell them to go, they went, no. Okay, we're just gonna take the guns and we're gonna take your soldiers, because the soldiers you do have don't really want to be doing this either. And it kind of, I think again, it's definitely an example, because again, most monarchs tend not to be killed because of anything more than just a political aspect. It's very rare that it's like for like an emotional revenge. Usually it's just cold hard, like, nope, they need to go because this is how my political structure is going to work. Just trying to think as well.
Well, it's also one of those situations that usually never starts with the idea of deposing the monarchy.
Yeah, it's usually we'll
It's
just
usually
ask
like,
for better
no,
rights.
we want this. Oh, well, they're not going to give it to us, and they're doubling down on not giving it to us. Well, then we'll start a ruckus about it. Oh, okay.
It's definitely you create your worst enemy kind of thing.
Yeah.
With monarchies are always like, well, if they're not listening to us, we'll use force. Oh, they're applying a lot more force back. Oh dear.
Well, how can we get out of this one? I know. I will apply more force. And then when they eventually lose, even then, usually people aren't like, we should behead these people. And they're like, no. Well, maybe if I refuse to do anything now until I get exactly what I want, which is what I already had, which was what people didn't want, maybe everything will turn out fine. And in the end, they just end up going, we really need to get rid of them.
Or the other one, an external power comes in and goes, if you execute them, we never were going to do anything to execute them. Oh, there'll be trouble. There will be trouble. We're coming to get you. It's like, well, it's a lose-lose. You're coming to get us regardless if we execute them or not. We might as well just do it.
Now we're gonna.
Exactly. If you're wondering what historical period we're referencing, it's Louis the 16th. 16th?
Yeah.
Or 17th. Yeah, 16th. Because that's basically how his thing went down. Because he was alive quite a bit. Well, like a month or two
quite
after.
A lot.
Yeah. He was alive for
tried
quite a
to
while.
escape, got brought back.
Yes, the escape. We've talked about the escape where he bungled him and his family into like a carriage, and he got stopped by these revolutionaries, and they were like, "Wait a minute!" and they looked at like a coin.
The coin, like coin face, coin. I know you. You're the reason I'm poor.
They did.
Back home with you.
You've also something that will come up more. Well, I tried to touch on. Well, we were trying to touch on with like the stuff with Montague and things. Is that often revolutionaries? We talk about counter-revolutionaries, but counter-revolutionaries in themselves exist because most revolutions, if you look through history, kind of don't have a solid idea of what they want to be yet, and usually that takes time. And unfortunately, most revolutions don't end
up having that much time.
Exactly. For example, a lot of people but we don't get taught as much that after the First World War, Germany, Austria, Hungary, all these countries were very, very close to just becoming communist. The reason they didn't was because the time it took for them to really work out what they wanted to do was enough time for, well, a combination of center and far right groups to stuff like mostly far right groups, especially in the case of Germany. But that's a big thing, and the same thing happened with the French Revolution, although it survived because it did have enough time to kind of go right. Okay, and fuck.
Well, the thing with it is, though, it sort of also snowballed into so many different governments that they sort of got a reset every time because they were the new government who had to now come up with what do we want from this revolution.
Exactly. And I think Aris
swung back and forth a lot over there.
And I think Aris has definitely had that very initial unsuredness, although I don't want to start speculating on different political structures because then we would be going to crazy areas. But that has brought me to an interesting thought for perhaps a further back history, if you'd be interested.
Yeah, sure.
It's about Aris. So I like to imagine that Aris was a lot bigger in its past. Like perhaps it was what's the word I'm looking for? Perhaps in more ancient times when the forests were much more available and they didn't serve as just borders, but they were actually there as a physical, presence.
Yeah.
That there was I'm kind of leaning into something like the Roman Empire or perhaps the Holy Roman Empire in the sense of like these very large contiguous empires which were facilitated by the forests. Should know, in our actual timeline, forest deforestation had been going on a lot earlier. We often link deforestation to the Industrial Revolution, but that is not the case. Like, our ancestors who first came to Britain had a big hand in deforestation. The classic one being a red squirrel could get from like the tip of Scotland to the bottom of England without having to ever touch the ground because the forests were that contiguous.
Yeah. Can you imagine that?
Oh yeah, no, it's insane.
I'd like to imagine that, but
yeah. And it's a similar thing when we talk about like Romans. Even if we go back to like the Mesopotamians, like they changed their environment quite drastically. But this is obviously a fantasy, and I like to imagine that these empires were perhaps more shrouded in maybe a bit of myth and mystery. Bearing in mind, again, real timeline, the Enlightenment and stuff had people thinking about the past a lot more and writing books about it, and history was becoming this big thing. It's also where we get a lot of historical inaccuracies, like the fall of the Roman Empire was truly the greatest sorrow that we ever saw, and you're just like, no, that's not how it happens. You read one source from a Roman that came out after, kind of didn't like the guy who took over. I think your historical...
And took all their money.
Exactly.
No,
yeah.
My stolen money was...
I know. Whereas
was stolen.
Yeah, like eight Romans are really sad, and the rest of the Romans are like, "Oh, there's a new guy. Okay, cool. Back to farming and living." But yes, this is all around.
Someone's sad about the end of the Roman Empire.
Oh no! And the Western though, because the Eastern lasted very long.
Kept going, yeah.
Yeah, kept going. And limping is probably quite a lot of limping near the end there. Did all right for it.
Same kind of limping though, like lots of greedy nobles and terrible leadership. So they
had their up spots.
Yeah, well,
which is my favorite
so did the
argument.
Roman Empire for a little bit, occasionally.
Oh yeah, that's my favorite. That's my favorite quote that I've heard. It was a YouTuber who was saying it's like, oh, someone's chatty. Someone really wants to talk about the Roman Empire. I know. It's a tragedy. I know. Caesar was done dirty. Yeah, it's okay. Don't worry about it. It's all right. Don't worry about it. So yeah, my thought process for the Empire is that it is closer to this mythical, not really very well understood period, and I'm now going to have to make up a name for this thing. And I kind of like the idea that all of the current existing nations all lay claim to this empire. Like, no, this is us. We were the ones that had this. We made this stuff. And it's this, and there is no right answer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's very Rome as well.
Yeah.
It was definitely we're the true heirs. I mean, not geographically, but
well, yeah, a lot of people don't recognize that's why the Holy Roman Empire is called the Holy Roman Empire, because it's meant to be the inheritor of the Romans. And if I'm not mistaken, I think there's tons of stuff, like tons of people were like, I am the inheritor of the last Roman. Actually, I know for a fact that's a big historical debate that still exists today, which is who was the last Roman in terms of what we classify. There's a good I gotta stop. I'm going to end up recommending all these history channels, and it's not going to help anyone.
Well, it will. It'll help them learn history.
That's true, but and it'll help them, get more foot traffic. So
there you
go. We will go with
Bubble Reg. I do like it actually as a sort of underlying source of tension between all of the nations as well, and like background for conflict, as you say.
The Nemid, Nemid. Nemid Empire. The Nemids. And nobody's quite sure what a Nemid was. Nemids
Nye, if you read my book, you'll find out.
Oh, is that actually a thing in your book? Yeah. Oh no, I don't want to use it now. I feel bad.
It's fine.
It literally, I'm looking on.
It's a city-state.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. By the way, I'm using Fantasy Name Generator, which is a godsend to anyone who does this stuff.
There you go.
Is that where you got Nemid, or did you just?
No, I just come up with stuff. Yeah.
Well, there we go. It's a little Easter egg for anyone who reads Lewis's work. It's very good. I like it. I do. I feel bad the last time I accidentally shat talk it, but I didn't mean to. But I didn't realize until you came back and you were like, "Thanks." Now I was like, "I'm sorry."
I was mostly joking. Don't worry.
I know.
I only cried for an hour afterwards, but.
Yeah. Oh, your wee one joined in, and you were like,
yeah.
Oh! Your poor wife came in. What is going on?
We're both sad about my book. Yeah, it seems unlikely.
But I quite like the idea, kind of like the Sea People, where it's like, they just appeared one day, the records don't show. And I also like the idea that the Empire got so big that everybody has a slightly legitimate claim, because they've not found... Now, perhaps, if this universe was to go into its equivalent of the 20th century, or the 19th or 20th century, maybe they would have an answer. But right now, at the current level of understanding, they don't, and it's this kind of big debate amongst scholars and the who has claim to the greatest empire. I've just realized, my God, there's so many plot points that somebody could take up.
Yeah, well, that's the idea.
A fairly small world so far. There's only 6 major.
Yeah, but that's the thing. You don't really you don't need a sprawling, massive campaign setting of 100 worlds where your players will end up going to 3 or something.
That's also true. I think as well, a big thing that just occurred to me is that a lot of because I was thinking about I think about this quite often when you look at world maps from the early 20th, midway through the 20th century. They're actually not as complicated as our own today, and I realize that's because a lot of big unified nations didn't, to use a term that I've heard people use, balkanize, like Yugoslavia or whatever, where they just pop out and turn into 12 different countries. So if you look up before World War well, I mean, even Germany, actually Germany got a bigger Poland. Okay, actually, yeah, that's a good point. Germany's the opposite of that, where it got more concise and kind of ordered.
Maybe we should make this a bit more organized.
Well, that was another example of France not really recognizing when it should just not get involved. Okay, and they're building forts. Okay, go. And Bavaria's sitting there like, whoa, what is okay, Germany, we'll join you, because these guys have just they are super ready to get us. It's whoa. That's Bismarck for you. Very, very, very cunning.
Well, being that basically he ended up using the plot of the 1848 revolutions, but for super conservative Prussian supremacy.
Oh yeah, I know. There's tons of stuff that he did. There's tons of stuff which he did,
which was make it more evil.
Well, yeah. And what's really kind of terrifying, in a kind of sense, is he did things that I think other figures in history would have attempted, if not in that place and that time, would have gone tits up. A big thing with Germany is that they had, I don't want to go as far and say better labor rights than other countries of the same time, but the reason they had that was because he was constantly juggling the Reich and making sure that there was enough of each side that liked, the policies that Prussia and then eventually the German Empire was the German Confederation than the German Empire. And it was this kind of like balancing act. But I do just sit there and think, like, if you were in even a different country, I guarantee that would have not gone as successfully as it did. And it still always astounds me. Also, I have a fun fact. Do you know who August von Mackensen is?
Probably not. Maybe.
Fairly influential. Quite a fairly influential general in World War One. However, my favorite fact about him is he died in his, like, I think early to mid 90s, right? He was born and lived for a time in the North German Confederation, saw the rise of the German Empire, saw the fall of the German Empire and the formation of the Weimar Republic, saw the creation of Nazi Germany, and then lived a couple years into the occupied... I don't think he got to West Germany, because West Germany took a couple of years to form. For those who don't know, the Allies had occupation zones broken up, and they weren't unified, but to kind of say fuck you to the communists who had a unified
East Germany.
Well, they'd created East Germany straight away, because nobody, like, Poland got the bits that it wanted and so did everyone else, but they just left it, and the Allies were like, oh, this does look a bit awkward now, because we've got 4 small Germanys that we look after, and they've just got one form. I don't think he saw that, because I think he died just on the cusp of the 50s. But I'm not going to tell you this.
I mean, that is insane. That is insane, though. Yeah.
That also kind of talks about how much Germany changed in less than 100 years.
Yeah.
But yes, that complete diversion was brought to you by
the kind of diversion you've come to expect from us.
He was born in 1849 and died in 1945, so he did not see the formation of West Germany, but he did live to see the occupations of Germany. 8th of November, so yeah, we did, because that was June, wasn't it, that the Reich fell. Wow, yeah, I'm still can't blow away by that fact.
Yeah, that is.
Oh wait, no, maybe it was the Kingdom of Prussia, actually. I think he might be older than the North German Confederation, actually.
1949. It's sort of it's pretty much on the cusp, because that was roughly the period where. Oh no, probably.
Oh wow! No, yeah, North German Confederation was 1867. So yeah, he was already.
Yeah.
Wow, he was already like older than me when that happened.
Yeah, the whole, because he was born just after the 1848 revolutions then, and that was sort of the idea of like, we could create a Germany out of this, and that's where that started. And then they slowly started, like, that was the last, well, the 1848 revolutions happened all across Europe, but they were the final liberal revolutions of Europe. But in Germany, they sort of sparked that idea of a unified Germany that the conservative leaders also hooked onto, mainly in Prussia, like, we could actually do something with this as long as Prussia's in charge of it.
Yep.
And then they started pushing for that whole Northern German Confederation.
Yeah. And then they absorbed Bavaria.
Everyone.
Yeah. Well, oh God, that's so insane now, because I always thought it was North German, but he's older than that. Wow. Yeah. Anyway.
That is cool.
I've completely forgotten what we were talking about with the world building.
There
the
was
Empire.
An ancient empire.
Nemid Empire. They have all claims to it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So all the nations have a kind of fair claim to it.
Yeah. If not an outright, like, I don't think it has any political weight, no more than saying you're the last Roman. I think it's just something that is a kind of background.
It's that sort of thing, though. Like, it has no real value, but on the other hand, it's the kind of reason that different countries might occasionally come to loggerheads if they're like, oh no, we have the superior claim.
It also throws in that thing that all fantasy worlds need, which is an ancient empire that has, like, if the writer ever needs to be like, oh, how does this thing fit into the world? Ancient empire, there we go. So
well,
what are these strange statues? It's the ancient empire. It's Nemeds.
Nemid. It's just ancient Nemidian. Oh no.
I think the Numidians are an actual people now that I think about
the
it.
Numidians.
Oh god, okay.
That's Numidians, yeah.
Oh yeah.
But the Nemidai we'll come up with
just replace the D with a T. Nemets.
The Nemets.
And that sounds like Nimitz, and I'm just thinking of the bloody ship.
The reason their empire fell was it was too hard to work out what to call them as a people.
Yeah. But yeah, I think...
Are they Nemets? Are they Nemidai? Are they Nemidians? No one could agree. They collapsed.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what else there could be, though, history-wise. What else was it you wanted to do today, aside from talking?
I get the impression this episode is going to be the history of Aris up to and including the revolution, kind of.
Okay, that works for me. Works totally fine for me.
Yeah. So we have that. We have what the monarchy was beforehand and the nobility that and we have the onset of the revolution with the idea of there's famine. The monarchy wanted to rally people to another war. The soldiers didn't want to go. The nobility kind of didn't want to send them, I assume.
Yeah. Well, no, I think the nobility wanted to at first, but then when things started getting hairy, they tried to shift blame. I do think that the nobility have a much more truncated influence than they did before. Yeah. Like, if they're around, it's like, oh, hi.
They're the Montagues of the revolution. They're sitting somewhere in a house trying to tell people what to do, but no one's listening. We've come up with this law. You put it in that pile over there. You see the one in the little boxes that are on the floor? That one.
Oh,
put it in there.
Yes. Oh, we're gonna... Oh boy, we're at that stage of the revolution. The burning part.
Yeah. Okay. So what kicked off the initial revolt/revolution then? Was it a thing that just like a singular event that wasn't necessarily planned to be much more than like a gathering or a march snowballed
let's do this. So a young Montague had heard of this unrest and thought, aha, I shall seize upon such an opportunity. Now, I think that he wanted to be a reformer, was perhaps an influential civil servant, maybe, I don't know, a lawyer or a banker or an accountant. So not nobility himself, but definitely affiliated to them. And he definitely kind of, churled up the people a bit. It definitely was a big influencer on that. And in kind of the heady times of the new revolution, he definitely was, seen as like, this is the guy who's going to lead us to victory. Yeah. I think he Actually, I want to say that I think his main aim was that kind of going around, spreading the revolution to various peoples. He definitely had followers that were more close to him. I don't know if you want to name them, but, kind of his own cabinet of sorts.
Do you want to give him like a group name?
Yeah, kind of the revolutionary
non-socks.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's way better than what I was going to do. The long socks, because they wear long socks. On their heads. Like that, like it's like little red. No, seriously, like little red hats. They wear the kind of like those hats.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they wear like much longer ones that are very droopy. Kind of like the waddle of a turkey, that kind of like the snooze or whatever, but they wear it on their heads, and it's like, which was definitely Montague's own invention. He's a seamstress by night.
Well, he's getting through some jobs.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
I'm going to add that, seamstress by night. But
that's what all autocratic rulers become. They try to become everything for them.
Modiste, apparently, I've been informed.
Oh, okay.
Apparently, seamstress is derogatory, so there you go.
Oh, is it? I did not know that.
I didn't either, but there you go.
Well, thank you.
My wife is finally listening to something I'm doing.
No, it's most appreciated. Thank you. Is that actually? I repeat the word again. Sorry.
Modiste.
Modiste. Okay. Thank you. I'm actually gonna write that down. Modiste. Well, he is a modiste by night.
There you go.
I did not know that.
Neither did I.
Well, no, I feel a lot better now knowing that. Okay. Right. So yes, I think that this is also around about the same time he would have started his whole "we must return to the values," and that's where people started getting it a bit confused and thinking he meant literally, when what he was meaning more was like return to a time when one could rise to the ranks and riches of the nobility, etc., etc. And it was like, no, don't actually start, walking around in armor and using old languages that no one speaks anymore. Why are you doing this? Okay, well, fuck it. You're being revolutionary, I guess. I'll deal with that when I have power and nobody deposes me. Which I definitely think is part of the revolution. Once he seized power, he was trying to basically, I kind of imagine him that he's wandering around basically starting fires, but not recognizing that he doesn't have the power to put them out, and that the people don't want to put them out. So I kind of like that idea that the revolutionaries are taking the revolutionary spirit not too far, but not in his vision, which is this kind of consolidated rise up. And the mistake he made is he's not actually consolidated the power, he's just spreading it to as many people as he can. And it's like, oh, yeah, you're not listening to me anymore. But anyway, that's in the future. I think that, to take a slight serious turn, I think the military would have been called, and there probably would have been tensions, perhaps. There would have been harm done to the revolutionaries or the protesters. Yep. And that's another thing that like adds to the pile of, yeah, no, this is just getting worse because we're now antagonizing peaceful revolutionaries who just want reform. They don't want to completely upend the system. But now that we're attacking them, they're kind of throwing in the towel going, well, what's the point? Like, being passive isn't making them stop. It's actually making it worse for us. So we might as well take action. And they have. I would imagine that the soldiery would get tired quite quickly because they themselves are just the people, but in uniform. So I think there would be a break off there. If you want to say that the general, the high command, whatever you want to call it, if they break off, I'm not sure. I think there probably would be, which brings us to nobility. I think there would be 3 kind of nobles that genuinely believe in the reform, which are very few and far between. But I do want to give that out there. Perhaps there are a couple individuals, probably younger individuals, who do like this revolutionary spirit and want to be part of it, because that's again, that's usually what happens. There are individuals of the higher upper class that tend to want to, a small percentage of a small percentage, but definitely they're there. There are those that are apathetic, so they don't actively get involved. But you know, if there's a marketing opportunity, if there's money for either side, they'll get involved. But it's mostly they're the ones that go, I'm non-political. If you catch my drift, that kind of like, I'm not going to defend the king. And then on the flip side, you've got a small percentage who are like diehard monarchists. Like, no, you touch the king. And they're the ones that I think are instigating the reprisals and are just making things so much worse. And are definitely the propagandists doing like the whole, if you take the king, you'll all be killed. And they're like, we never even considered that. Thank you for giving us the idea. No! And I swear to God, if you break those weapon caches that are in these locations, it's like, oh, thank you. We didn't even know where they were. Thanks. Yo!
Thanks.
But yeah, I think that's definitely kind of an aspect. But again, it is small percentages for those in favor and those against. Most, I think, are impartial and are completely indifferent and will only really act when it suits them. And they're not too big on that. I would say if we're going to go for the civil servants, I think that most of them join in, but again, it's kind of in a more withholding of labor rather than I don't think the nation building would happen at the start of the revolution. I think once Montague and his cadre take power, then that's when those services come back online. So I think most of them just would have shut for the chaos. I'm trying to think what else history-wise you could add.
I think that's the fair sort of idea of the initial onset of the revolution. How do you think it progressed after that then?
So I think once Montague has lit fires across Aris, and he and his people will eventually go and meet with the nobles that are sympathetic to them, the members of the military high command, and they will plan the actual taking of power. I think that there is a lot of trepidation because it's like, oh God, we're actually gonna do this. Like, we're gonna remove the king, the person who for century, well, not king. We've not decided if it's gonna be a king, queen, or the empress or the emperor, but I am thinking we'll come up with a name later, but like I think the spiritual and cultural influence, even though they loathe that title, are probably still a bit apprehensive. But I think another event would occur, because we talked about them. I think that the counter-revolutionaries would start acting up, and I think that's when they decide it's now or never, and they make, haste makes waste. I think in the south of the country, another movement has kind of awoken, and they're getting news in the north of like, oh yeah, no, they just like stormed a fortress and took it, and it's like, wait, that's not our people. Shoot. Okay, we need to go, we need to take power, because if we don't, I think the guys just to our south will. Oh, and there's people in the east and west also collating. Like, the fires are now actually turning into infernos as they can start to consolidate and start to make sense and meaning of things. So I think that's why the king becomes executed. I keep saying king, but it's probably because I'm thinking of Louis still. I think that's why the monarchy and the nobility that stand by them get treated the way they do, because it's not, they're actually panicking to try and make a big show that they're the ones taking the stand, whereas in reality they're desperately trying to just show off. It's like, yeah, we got the monarchs, Yeah, and we're going to execute them. We're the most hardcore counter. We're the true revolutionaries, because obviously communication at this time is not limited. It's not non-existent, but it's limited. So I imagine they're trying to make a big message that will stretch across the country, and hopefully, show the others who's boss. Because it's like, yeah, you didn't kill a monarch, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can't anymore because we've done it.
Yeah, we've gotten rid of all of them. And as silly as that sounds, I can see that as a rationale to want to.
I can well imagine that.
Potentially also since, that'll come later, because we were saying that Danube, was it, has its own revolutionary movement, but that has been and they are now cloistering some of their revolutionaries, but I think that comes after the revolution
that's sort of like once it's clear that they've created this new state out of a revolution, then the people in Danube get the idea of like, maybe we could do that as well.
And I think that do you want to name the other counter-revolutionary groups? Because we could just do,
if you want.
Yeah, no, because I just thought we could do more clothing. So we've got the short scarves. The scarves are obscenely short. They're just like a little wrap around the neck, and that's them done. The short scarves. The middling sleeves, so they're people that wear their sleeves like up to about the elbow. They don't reach the bottom, but they don't go right up to the top. They're like these weird, like ends at the joints.
3/4 sleeve.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, and I hate them already.
Exactly, and the scarlet ribbons. I don't know. I just like that they have very red ribbons that they tie to themselves. That one seems a bit out of place with the length one, but I couldn't think of another length-based thing. Or we could just color them.
That's what makes them so dangerous, though. Because they're not adhering to any of the revolutionary rules.
Which is
not even the naming one.
My favorite fact about the revolutionary Russia is the armies are just colored. So there's the red army, the white army, the black army, the green army, and you're just like, okay,
that's useful.
Yeah, exactly.
I can remember that.
Yeah, red army is the communists, the white army is the monarchists, the black army are just straight up anarchists in Ukraine as well. But that was kind of more of Ukraine gets to be its own thing. Go away, shoo, go, no, leave us alone. And I don't even know what the Green Army was. They were a bunch of things. They were just, I think they were just angry.
Cobbled together, yeah.
I'm looking it up now because I learned about this today and I've already forgotten. But yeah, I feel like that's why the king was king. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think that's why the monarchs were killed. Definitely.
Seems like not a fair reason, but it seems like a reason.
Okay,
suitable
so it seems that these basically were just the green army or the Greens were literally just peasants going, leave us alone, we don't want to get involved with this, you're just coming over here and killing us, you're talking about these white movement, red movement, just fuck off, leave us alone. But yeah, that seems to be what I'm reading here.
I don't have any more chickens. Stop trying to steal my chickens.
Yep, which is a thing I think a lot of people forget. It's like, they all sides were just like, do you have grain? Yeah, sure, we got some in the back. Whoa, what are you doing? We're taking the grain for the war effort.
Yeah.
Oh.
We'll pay you back when it ends, maybe.
We'll pay you
depending
back when
on who wins.
Yeah. But you guys are gonna win, right? You guys are gonna win, right?
Go either way.
What color are we? Oh, we're white. Oh, we're the white army. No, it's the no.
Yeah. If by win you mean move, yes, we are.
Can we come with? No,
I need that space for my Fabergé eggs.
Yes. So I think that's what has happened, and that's why the monarchy was killed.
Okay.
As to what happens past that, I think that Montague's like, okay, I've taken power, and this is now where the calm but powerful leader starts to crumble. I like to think that the stress has finally gotten to him, and now he's just okaying all kinds of bizarre and out there ideas because he's trying to appeal to everybody, like ironically the monarchs before him, and anyone that's getting upset with him, he's just like, what do you want? Do you want a 12-day Labor Day? I don't know. What do you want? And they're just like, yeah, sure. And because I kind of don't want to go the Lafayette route where to like it's all murder. I more like the idea that he just ends up becoming the monarchy again. The monarchy is just trying to make people happy without actually understanding or caring how to do that. And the nobility don't want to shift anything. So he's just agreeing to make all these insane new revolutionary ideas to make people agree with him and leave him alone so that he can hopefully carve this slop of clay into some kind of art. But the reality is he just keeps piling on more and more unfinished ideas. And I think that's when the more peaceful overthrowing occurs, when they're just like, you're not actually doing anything, you're just starting things and not doing anything past that.
Is there any kind of active counter revolutionary sort of, do we have like a Vendée situation going on where there's like diehard monarchists in a distant part of the country that is difficult to murder everyone?
I think that for the most part they have, most of the monarchists have left, and the few that remain are not super, like they're kind of more wistful for perhaps a general to rise to power and start making claims like that. But most of them have left. I think they've fled because, as I said, if it wasn't Montague's group, it was another group. As for the other groups, I think that they have reluctantly closed their doors, but in that kind of, oh, we'll be back if things go wrong. We all know each other. We know where we all live. We can call each other. Well, we can reform. And I think that's why Montague has been like frantically just throwing plans together, because he knows that these are all still unified
could
groups.
Come back. Yeah,
exactly. If they come back, that's up for the game to decide, because they could be allies, antagonists, whatever. I think if a GM decides to play when the big war's about to occur with this fantabulous general figure, I think they would have to not be a big threat. They're probably more of an early level threat. And to be fair, most of them would just be people. I don't think it's like a secret society, like what was going on in Qing, China, or where it's like, oh, the secret societies basically just run the country, and the actual court is like, okay, you're gonna do this, and it's like, yeah, sure. Then they go to the secret society. It's like, are we gonna do this? Yeah, do it, but obviously give us the proceeds. Don't give the don't do that, because that's what the box. No, it was not. The Boxer Rebellion was a different thing. But look into the secret societies at that time, because the Qing dynasty was just poaching with them, and they did not give a shit. And they're actually the origin for a lot of the crime syndicates that exist within China and the larger part of the world. Similar in many respects to like how the mafia spread, where it's like, because it was like the Sicilian mafia was like, hey, Mussolini, you know, it's we're cool with you, man. Just remember, we're top dog in Sicily. And he was like, no, I'm just gonna send the army down there. Oh boy, you've not understood. We'll be back. Leaves, goes to the United States, propagates, brings the mafia stronger, comes back to Sicily. It's like, haha, we win. And we're stronger than ever now. So, yep.
And we have loads of international trade.
Yeah. As we talk to all of our Italian brethren in America, well, Italian Americans, and they seem pretty down for this mafia business. But yeah, I imagine that's what's happened, is that they are waiting not in wait. It's not like they're waiting for a big failure. I imagine the peaceful revolution, as it would be called, where they just remove Montague, was a de-triggering of a bomb there. Like, oh, okay, yeah, you got rid of him, so we're all right now with that. We're not gonna rise up yet. As for, I think, if you want, because we've got about half an hour left.
So that's like the idea of the new Revolutionary Council. Who are they?
The current.
Yeah, because they're the current leaders, so
they
kind of need to flesh them out a little bit as well.
No, I agree. So they are mostly the people that Montague had surrounded himself. However, I think they would have made some considerations for some of the other larger groups and have had, taken bits of their groupings as well to just kind of placate them. It's not a takeover. For them, it's like, oh, we'll let some of the short scarves in and some of the red ribbons, scarlet ribbons. But so, to be clear, we're the biggest part of this.
Yeah, it's there's probably even some nobility and stuff in there then, so it's sort of like a mix of everyone who was open to the idea of revolution, but and also don't want to utterly destroy the country.
Exactly, and there's definitely an air of like, okay, we've learned our lesson. Having one figurehead doesn't really seem to work very well, so we're going to just kind of call ourselves, this council, and everyone's going to listen to us. I think at the current time, they are being listened to, and this is about the time where they're properly making the reforms necessary. They are very not frantically, I think they are methodically dealing with some of the weirdness that Montague's absurdity allowed, and they are just methodically going through these weird laws that have been called into place, these weird out there principles, and just methodically trying to make them work. I think their understanding of democracy has, improved. Everyone gets a vote. I think the problem is that they're having a tough time actually building the infrastructure for voting, and at the moment it's only the large cities that have proper voting rights, because it's like there'll be a village in the middle of nowhere that's like, okay, are you going to vote on the council? The what? The Montague guy? No, he's gone. Oh, we've been out the loop. I think everyone knows that the king's
well, who are the candidates then?
There's this guy. I don't know who that is. There's this woman. No clue. No. There's this person. No. Yep. Not helping me out here. It's like that. I've got a newspaper, but it took me a week to get out here, so it's already out of date. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
I think people would actually. I think it'd be a little bit like when people had to go get their census kind of thing, but on a much more frequent level, and that might be a bit of apathy from the voting, where it's like, oh, I've got to go into a fucking city, I've got to load the family and the kids into the wagon and take them down. I got to take great grandma and the 8 uncles that I have, because we've all got to go to vote. And I think that some communities are a bit like, it was easier. I mean, we didn't like it, but it was easier when there was just someone making the decisions for us. That is, though, again, a minority. I think there is kind of a patriotic, like, yeah, we can vote. Fuck yeah. Like, I think there is a degree of excitement. And I like to imagine there is a bit of joy and joy and exuberance, because people feel they have more control. I think it's just at the moment the council's like, okay, we have to design an entire voting infrastructure. That's going to take a bit of time. In terms of, because again, I do think it's for the big war. I think there are, and I actually kind of like the idea, if you're okay with this, of maybe having it sense that if you were GMing, you could pick which figure in the council is the one that goes, I will lead us to victory, and I'll also be in charge. What was that last part? No, it's just the first bit. You know?
It's only for a little bit.
Yeah, only for a little bit. And I place the leaves on my head. Oh boy. Oh,
the leaves of emergency control for a tiny little bit. Yeah.
And I'd like my family to be in charge after me. Okay, why? I think this is...
Also, if we do happen to liberate any areas, I feel like maybe some of my family should probably be put in charge of the...
Yes. So maybe... I don't know. Speaking as an alternate history nerd who likes playing games where you can change history, I really like the idea that maybe like they have a religious leader there, like from one of the faiths. So if the GM was like, they're the ones that will lead it, it's got a lot to do with the spirituality and the trees. But maybe if it was see, it's not actually turning into a whole like gameplay design thing, which I don't want to get into here. But that's what I'm thinking. Like,
but
maybe
we can have like a couple of sort of Well,
and that's...
suppose they can come up with that themselves as well.
Yeah, the council is just like I don't know what you want to say, 12 people, and if the GM so wishes, they can kind of design a character that fits an ideology that promotes something. Like they can't just be like, I just want to lead an army. Like they have to have a goal. Because even Napoleon, again, it's debatable what his goals were outside of conquest, but a lot of people do kind of go back and forth of, was he a bringer of democracy, or did he just want to create his own autocracy? If you ask me, it's a bit of both. I think he did just want to be an autocratic ruler, but I think he couldn't put the genie back in the bottle and either directly or indirectly created democracies for other parts of of Europe, especially in the Germanic states, where they were like, oh wow, this not having to listen to the Holy Roman Empire is great.
Wow, I've never had that before.
This is great.
I'm getting Austria's so much done now that they're not around.
Austria's just stopping in a corner. We were the most powerful empire, and now look at us. We're still an incredibly powerful and wealthy empire, but we lost. And we're not called the Holy Roman Empire anymore.
I mean, we're also still really bad at administration and...
Oh yeah, we're terrible.
not letting everything be run by nepotism, and apparently our books are meant to balance in some way. I don't know what that's about. I mean, it's just throw money at... Buy.
Are we not going to sell at any point, sir? Buy. Like I think we have to get money back from the things we're buying. What?
No, I have a solution for that. We'll just not pay anyone ever. Anyone who's not already rich doesn't get paid. Oh, that's not going to end well.
I don't think that's how economies work. I think money has to circulate, not just sit in one place. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think that's kind of I like that concept where it's like, there can be a kind of, because I think that's another, and this is not a problem. This is just not within the scope of what we're trying to do.
No, it's also more something that the game itself, the GM and the players will sort of work that bit out themselves.
Yeah, I think as well. I think people, at least to me, I think there needs to be a distinction made when people talk about like an adventure book and like just a world book, where it's like the world book is just ideas. Like do whatever. Like I think that's what we're making. Like it's just it's just a bunch of ideas. Do whatever you want with it. I don't think you could do that if we were making like it's like Curse of Strahd. Like you need, like Strahd has to be like this, and because you're making an adventure out of it. But like just a book about the Forgotten Realms can just be super like, and you can do that. Fuck it, you can do that if you want, even though they're kind of not like that. But I digress. I prefer making worlds where it's like, go nuts. And since it's so heavily influenced by history, I kind of like, Exactly. We literally, I mean, to be fair, we have created a world which is like, oh yeah, no, like whatever bizarre idea, probably somebody is doing.
There's probably some room for it there somewhere.
Hello there. Oh wow, you've gone back to wearing furs. Yes, look, we were thinking about it, and that's definitely what Montague was trying to get us to do. We wanted to go back to the time where you could just walk around with furs on and we're warm. And we don't have to worry about all this textiles business. We just skin some beavers and boom, we're sorted. Right. What happens when all the beavers are gone? We haven't got to that point yet.
Can we stop farming beavers? Maybe that's what we need. Oh, by the way, there's also giant wasps. These are a problem. Yeah, I don't know where they came from. I'm looking at you, Crichton. Or whatever.
What? That's not us. Oh, Aris, you can. Has the control on those giant fucking wasps going, sir, it's really not going well. It's not like it's actually gone really badly. I think we're at risk as well. See, that's what I like about this world. There's a lot of metaphor and reference, and then there's giant wasps. And you're like, oh, wow, yeah, that's... What... But what people don't know is
gives
the giant wasps.
Everything what you want.
Yeah, the giant wasps represent the chaos that was at the turn of the 18th century, 17th century, 18th, no, 19th.
When I
19th.
get around to writing it up in a little thingy for people, I'm gonna put like little lines underneath with, and here what we are referring to is obviously
the giant wasp plague of 1287. We haven't heard. It was awful. It was really bad for everybody involved.
Mass stingings, anaphylactic shock everywhere.
Oh my goodness! But I'm trying to think what else. I think we've reached.
Buzzing. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I think we've reached the point where, like, the timeline, we could go further back.
No, I think it's pretty good because there is a line to it. You have an idea of the history as well, and even of the revolution, but there's like no... It's wide enough still that you can, as a player or a GM, you can shoehorn events into there without us having gone, no, on this day, upon the barricades in Street 12 or whatever.
Exactly,
yeah. No, it's still got enough freedom, and you've got an overall view and a fair group of like internal opposing parties as well, and things that could create conflict.
Definitely
looks good. Is there anything you want to add to the history of Aris or anything like that?
I don't think... is there any glaring holes we're missing? I don't know. I'm trying to think if there's anything big. I guess names for the present monarchs, but I don't know. We can always come up with them later. I'm just trying to think, because like obviously the revolution itself was a big hole, and like the system that they'd overthrown was a hole.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything else.
You don't really... It doesn't need to be pinned down. Like you said, we don't need to create the line of, and this was, Charles the 36th, and he was the...
And his taxes relating to the yeast shortage was very, very amazing. Yes, definitely a Zerorian tactic, and of course Hugo Zerorian. I don't know where I'm going with this. That sounds like a boring historian. But what I will say is, I think if I was to give any advice, not that I am remotely in any place to give advice for anything at all.
Give some advice.
I think when people talk about world building, there's two things that I think you always need to have in the forefront of your mind, which is, first, the world is the stage, it's not the actors. And ultimately, especially if it's TTRPGs, but also if you're writing a story, if you work for television, like anyone who works for television is watching this, but whatever.
I
said
mean,
that too quickly,
clearly
didn't I?
Bubble Reg
Yeah.
is highly influential in the world of television and films.
I actually would be very impressed if
Hasn't denied it yet, so you know, we're gonna go with that.
I'm with the BBC. It's like, oh wow, okay, well, shit, I didn't know. I think if you're doing that, what the world is not the ultimate point. It's the characters, it's the themes, it's the ideas, and the world is essential. I do find that people that poo-poo world building, like being into it, I think it can be a little bit too sycophantic, like, oh, world building is completely unimportant. It's like, well, no, it isn't. It's necessary to give context to what's going on, and it can be really encouraging, and I think I really enjoy it. But I also understand the argument of like, it's not the be all end all of a story. Looking at certain very high grossing films, there are some people that get a little bit too attached to the world, and you're like, it's a movie or it's a book. Bubble Reg, you don't work for television. That's okay.
You didn't say anything about movies.
God, no, let's not do this. You didn't say anything about stereographs. Do you work in the stereograph business?
Theatre,
it's all good.
Opera, operette.
Yeah, it's all good.
But yeah.
You being you makes it worthwhile, Bubble Reg.
Yes, and we're very glad that you've joined us once again. And you deserve to work on television and movies if that's what you want.
The thing I will say though is that definitely taking too much influence from it and insisting that it has to be like this and that is not necessary. I think if you recognize that ultimately people here for the story, the world is just the mechanism by which the story is played. The second point is, don't, and this is for all creation, don't try and get it all done in one sitting, because two things will happen. You will burn out and you will create something that down the line you will not recognize. If you grow with what you're working with, obviously if you have deadlines, which I'll say in a minute, but if you grow with what you're working with, I think this world has turned out the way it has because we've taken it bit by bit and we will continue to. And I think that makes it more entertaining because you can obviously see where I'm watching a new type of history show and I'm like, oh, okay, I want to start implementing that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's difficult. Like, I think that the saying is like, if you ask a creator 5 years after they've made their work how they feel about it, they'll always have like gripes and issues because like, oh, I could have done this, or if I changed that. And it's like, yeah, because we change. 5 years is a long time for someone, and you will change creatively. So don't stress. Obviously, put time restraints on yourself. Don't just leave it like, I'll get it done one day. But don't worry about trying to be like, okay, I now have to make the entire currency system tonight in an hour full of Red Bull at 2 a.m. Like, don't ever do that to yourself. Nobody. But that's
that, by the way, is the special episode of Worlds Without.
Yeah. Oh god. 2 a.m. we're on Red Bull. Let's do this shit.
Right, currency systems.
Woo! Oh, thank you. For those who can't, because this all has to be on YouTube, you will be able to read all the stuff.
When they won't be able to read how nice Bubble Reg is.
I'm finding this really interesting. Your knowledge of history really lends itself to the world creation I'm finding, as you're able to draw so much inspiration from actual societal history. Thank you. We're nerds, and I think for all the nerds out there, draw from your weird nerddoms and make your own work from that. Everybody, I think that's another thing. Everyone that's famous is famous because they are just massive nerds, and that can sometimes be their Achilles heel. But like, that's the thing with it, and there's nothing to be thinking about that, unless of course like you do that really anal thing where you're just like, that's not historically accurate. You're just like, oh god, it's a movie or it's a book. Just doesn't have to be. Oh my goodness. But yeah, that's the only other thing I would say. If you're going to use history, don't get too hung up on trying to make it 100% as it was historically, because history doesn't happen in a vacuum, and there are like 100 million things that influence a historical event, and you can't map all of them perfectly to a fantasy or
that is
sci-fi
true.
or fictional set. Broad strokes.
And also, hand sewing all the costumes takes a really long time.
It does. It does very much. Yeah, it actually does.
So don't do that.
No, don't do that either. Don't do a Montague and end up creating the entire long sock army's outfits. That's what.
Maybe
that's what
it needs more sock.
We shall take our socks off and make them longer and place them on our heads. Yeah. Woo. I think he's a bit stressed. And yes, take your socks off, place them on your heads. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Right. Okay. No, I shall refit them so they can be worn as hats. I like how this was after Bubble Reg's really nice compliment about us being like knowing what we're talking about, and I just went on a ramble about sock hats. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. On that note, I don't know. Is there anything else you want to? I mean, we can fill another 10 minutes just rambling if we want. But I think it's roughly sort of, we've got the history bit down enough that it gives everyone an idea of how and what and how things have got to where they are now. And also we don't quite have enough time to start anything else.
No, we don't. Like, do you want to plug?
Now is the time to throw stuff out there. Yeah, sure. If you want to plug stuff,
I have nothing to. I mean, I have the usual thing. Go to my Twitter, Erzatz Expert, and you find stuff. I've actually put the YouTube channel link on my on my Twitter thing now, so you can go to that. But seriously, I'm quite lazy and just put everything in one spot, and that is the focal point where you can find my stuff. So
do you want to promote anything else yet, Nye?
I mean, there's the YouTube things, but I don't know, like, as I said,
they're very the YouTube things.
My videos or so much game? Do you want me to promote that?
No. Your videos.
Oh, have I not talked about the podcast?
You haven't. We've been waiting for the big announcement.
I didn't know. Yeah, I have a history podcast.
Yeah. After that, we'll answer Bubble Reg's question.
Okay, yeah, sorry, yes, Bubble Reg.
Nye has a history podcast, so watch that on YouTube.
Yes, I tried to cover a lot of. I've been trying to cover a lot of topics. It's still in its infancy, and I don't plan to do much more with it than. Fun fact: I think I actually will have a new logo coming out today, which I'm going to tweet as well. But if you're watching this on YouTube, that's going to have no bearing to anything. So. It doesn't matter. But yeah, that'll be fun. I think I'm going to get some music, just like a 10-second thing composed. I experimented today with the most newest one with images, but I've realized that basically almost turns it into a video, like without, like I could actually add video stuff. And now I'm starting to maybe not want to do that because that took a long time. But hey, progress is hard, so maybe I'll do more with it. I don't know, but at the moment it's still very experimental. I'm just trying stuff. I probably will have actual series started at the end by next year, so 2022. Like I'll actually start trying to do some more long-term stuff than just whatever I come up with in a week. But yeah, that's
and I've listened to it, so it's definitely worth listening to.
So I think we'll answer Bubble Reg's question just to think it out. Yeah, exactly. I am just trying to learn how to do these things. I have to take my own advice and not rush things, but also like actually try and make incremental growth with each one, because I didn't want to just immediately go, okay, first one's done. I'm never changing anything ever again. I'm complete. But yes, to answer your question. Oh, sorry.
I would say it is like there is visible, I'm not saying there's anything bad, but there's visible like improvement steps in your podcast. So I've been enjoying that. Every week it gets better, and I'm like, ooh.
The people that watch it do give me a lot of advice, either privately or like. Hopefully, I would like people to comment and if they have an issue, because I prefer people ask me to improve, if that makes sense. Not like, it's the internet, so every time you ask it to do something nice to you, it would just be like, okay, we're going to make this horrible. It's like, oh. But anyway, to answer your question, Bubble Reg, are there any examples where a monarch was trying to do well by people, but famines and stuff came up that were totally out of their control, and so the people got rid of them? I would not say, and Lewis, you might have a better understanding. I have a pretty varied, like I try to learn as much as I can about human history. I don't think there is much in the way of a deposition solely because of things out of the monarch's control. As we were saying, famines, plagues, a lot of these things tend to be exasperated by societal issues, and usually it's even things like the bubonic plague was exasperated by a combination of monarchs and nobles having very little care for their subjects. However, if you're wanting perhaps the closest oy vey moment, I would probably go for Justinian's plague. So Justinian was the emperor of the East Roman Empire, and the Eastern Roman Empire at that time could have bounced back. If you're not familiar with what the Eastern Roman Empire is, a century before the Western Roman Empire, so the Italian peninsula and the surrounding areas collapsed, they split into two Romes, East and West, and East is, what is now present-day Turkey, and like parts of Egypt and Lebanon, and also kind of going a little bit into like Bulgaria and Greece and stuff like that. Yeah. So Justinian's plague was a case of bubonic plague, and it decimated, like we're talking properly just destroyed the Eastern Roman civilization. And while Eastern Rome lasted well after that, I think that's a good example of like, Justinian, wherever you feel about him as a ruler, it paled into that, and there was nothing he, by the way, did cause problems for it, which is going back to what I'm saying about
they always kind of,
there's always kind of a flub from these groups. But I would say that's probably the closest I can think of a proper like, there was no win strategy. You could be the best ruler in the world, but that was just gonna. But
interestingly, I can think of the opposite case.
Oh, really interesting.
Because amusing fact, after Napoleon III came to power in France and started modernizing France, actually went to great levels to ensure that there wouldn't be any more famines, and there wasn't in France until I think after the First World War. So it actually succeeded quite well, but obviously flummoxed a lot of other stuff and ended up getting beat by the Prussians and deposed anyway.
That is a very fair point. I didn't even consider that. Yeah, but famines. If we're using famines as an example, famines are often exasperated as well. It's as it currently sits in the 21st century, we are more familiar with the famines related to anthropogenic climate change, so global warming and things like that. But in the past, they were affected by weather phenomena, but they were also affected by policy of areas. And to be clear, that's still how it happens today. Not to end on a sad note, but we live in a society where we create enough food to feed everyone on Earth. The problem is not the quantity of food. The problem is the distribution. And there are parts of the world that tragically do not get the food of the world, and that's why so much of it just ends up rotting in a
big pile.
Yeah. But I think, and I want to end on this positive note, and it kind of relates to our world building. I think humanity has all the capacity to become good and to do right by other people. It just requires people to do right by others. It's a self-fulfilling cycle. You do good by others and more good will be birthed into the world. And it just, yeah, that's all I can say.
There you go. So not an entirely straight answer to your question, but there weren't many other than you gave a quite good example for the Eastern Roman Empire, but other than that, I don't think it usually does come down to there's always a part where they're directly involved in doing something stupid, and the famine exasperates the situation to the point where a revolution follows. But
I would say, well, not every time does hardship cause revolution. Sometimes hardship is just brunted by the people and nothing comes of it. I think we often like to imagine that our ancestors would always rise up in injustice, but it's not always like that. And unfortunately, sometimes people just endured it. Thank you. Yes.
Anyway, on that note, I think we'll round things off with Nye's hopeful, positive view of humanity and our ability to succeed in the future if we just try.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you for joining us this evening for the history of Aris, the concise edition. And we'll probably be back next week, either with more of this or with some more Hex and Counter gaming. We'll see. And other than that, obviously, let me know in the comments what you'd like to see or hear more of, and join us on Discord and stuff. Let us know there. All those places are open to communication. I think that's pretty much it. Anything else you want to say before we go, Nye?
No, as always, I had a lovely time here, and I'm excited to do more in the future.
Thank you. I rather enjoy having you on as well. So, because basically you talk for 2 hours and I type up all the great ideas that you have, and I don't have to do anything. Occasionally ask a question. So, Nye, how do you see this? And then you're like, well. Anyway, thank you, everyone. And stay safe, stay gaming. Good night.
Bye-bye.